Questions or comments? God. I told somebody I'd do the picture of man, so you all get to sit through it one more time. Can you see from over there, Steve? Draw a picture to communicate something. It puts it in a nice little graphic format. You don't even have to visualize it. About something we don't normally think about. We all know that we have a body. Unfortunately, we believe that the body is me, which ain't so. What I am is a spirit that lives in this body. Even and it is not quite right. That's okay. And I have the ability to interact with the body. So that's what we draw this funny little wavy line for, to say that the awareness is associated with the body and it has the ability to interact with it. Most people call this their mind, which is an okay word, except it's misleading because of the way we use the word mind today. Mind really is thoughts, feelings, a bunch of information processing stuff in the awareness itself that can take all those thoughts and feelings and sensations that the body tells it about and make sense out of what's going on. Be aware. Unfortunately, the body is perfectly capable of being aware all on its own, isn't it? In a not very good fashion. Because when left on its own, it's aware sort of like a dog or a horse is. Just barely. Just enough to respond to the environment and keep itself alive. Because it's in the human body, it's a little bit smarter than a dog or a horse. In that the physical part of the human mind can do language processing, which a dog or a horse's can't. We've even more or less found a place in that little lump of matter that does that, huh? So you can have the illusion, if you like, that that's all there is the body. Can't you? And most do, don't they? You go and study physiology and you study psychology and you study all that stuff and they will explain to you that that's all there is that body and the processing centers and so forth. And you know what? They're probably right, effectively, for most human beings. But there is nonetheless a spirit here, whether we want to admit it or not. And that's another aspect of mind. The spirit that can realize that it's here and live a conscious life and be aware on purpose instead of just by design. Because it has to. Because like the heart, it just beats all the time. And then we go a little bit further and say that this body is not only inhabited by one spirit, but it's crowded. It's got two in here. That spirit, around here we just call X, because we don't know very much about it at all. Heck, we don't even know very much about the awareness, do we? I used to think that you probably experience life about the same way that I do. I have long since concluded that I'm wrong. You don't. And that the truth is, I don't think you even know much about this. I think about all you know about is this. And you actually mistake the physical functioning of a bunch of nerve cells as being the mind, being the awareness. It is not. The awareness is a spirit. It's not a thing. It can use all of this stuff that goes on in the body as input. But it also has the ability, by interacting with this other spirit, to take charge of all of this and use it completely, if it wants to. If it wants to wake up out of the dream that it's a body, and that what the body does is me, and that's all I am. As far as I can tell, in most human beings, the identification of a spirit with a thing is absolute and complete. Doesn't even know it's there anymore. It just is the body and its thoughts and its feelings and its sensations and its odd little limitations and its mess of habits that it calls behavior. The way these two spirits interact, well, I should start from this. This whole thing is always an environment of some kind, right? I've always got something around me out here, huh? And that environment is constantly sending sensory impressions into the body that go into the physical mind, get processed into something I can understand about reality, a picture of it. That goes to the awareness. Now, since the awareness is dead, it just functions as though it were another organ in the body and automatically processes any information given to it and passes it on to X without doing a damn thing. Because it just apparently has just about enough life there to function as if it were an organ, a liver or a kidney or something. And stuff goes into it, and it does its little thing, and stuff goes out of it. Probably about the same way that it does in a dog or a cat. I presume that has to happen about that way in a dog or a cat too, because a dog or a cat actually has this set up the same way, doesn't it? It's got a little bit of life in it, a little bit of this unknown spirit that has made everything alive. And just like in a human being, that spirit is what has to keep the whole biology working. Because our wonderful modern science aside, this is not quite purely mechanical. Life has to be in all things to keep the show-go working. From the absolute lowest level that we only theorize exists up to the highest levels. Oddly enough, every single atom in this universe has a little bit of life in it. So the whole machine don't just fall apart. You ever seen a human being make a machine that repairs itself and is self-regulating? Yep, they all gotta have a mechanic come along every now and again, don't they? Because things sort of break down after a while, don't they? But interestingly enough, our marvelous scientists have posited that the universe is that way. It is a miraculous machine that is self-repairing and self-regulating, apparently. It doesn't require any intelligence to make sure it's functioning all the time. It'll be interesting if one day we wake up and the machine broke, gravity don't work no more. I'd like to see the look on folks' faces if that happened personally. Oh, look! The universe broke! Where's the repairman? So all this information comes into the awareness, along with, unfortunately, a bunch of information about what it all means that is passed on to life. I think I spelled that wrong. Or an infinite intelligence that understands all of this and keeps it working. And that brings about a response in the environment, which means I do something, I take care of the situation. And that's called living, isn't it? So, one of the reasons that we talk about this is to remind people that they might want to check out and see if their assumption about what they are is true. That this is not the way we see things. That I am actually a spirit. There are a lot of folks who talk about it, but oddly enough, most of them claim to own a spirit, don't they? Not be one. Most of the folks, at least in this country, I hear that are willing to even admit maybe there's a little bit more than just this chunk of meat standing here. So they have a soul. I always wonder what it is that has that thing. Mm-hmm. They don't say I am a soul, do they? They have one. So they own the spirit. They still leave unspoken or unsaid what the I is, don't they? It has all these things. And I don't think they know what the heck they're talking about. I don't believe I've often seen them with any real experience of what they're saying. I think this is just an odd notion they've gotten into their heads, which explains the funny choice of language as far as I can tell. See if we can maybe get some experience of this, get that awareness to wake up again. Literally, as far as I'm concerned these days, to come back from the dead. And start looking around, because the awareness can perceive some things that the body simply cannot. And get that there is an awareness here that can do some things, and maybe one day live this life as a conscious being that consciously has an association with yet another spirit, that is life itself. Maybe live that way. If you don't want to be a very clever animal, if you're content to be a human being as defined by the rest of the human beings here, this is certainly unnecessary. You can just be a very clever animal, very proud of the fact that it's cleverer than all the other animals here. And talk about how wonderful and noble you are while you do the most depraved, vile things, along with some wonderful and noble things. And so on and so on. But if that isn't quite enough for you, good news. You could start looking for this particular point of view and see if you can wake up out of this dream that all you are is just an animal. I know that's my words for it. I know you don't think you're just an animal. Wake up out of that dream and take a look around and see what you'd like to do. Now, the rest of the animals here are quite dangerous. Most likely, I can't guarantee this, but most likely, if you come out of the dream and you take a look around, you will kind of figure out that what everybody believes about what's going on here is about as nonsensical as anything you could make up in a story. It's just the most fantastical, ridiculous nonsense ever heard. And so you might sort of see that you don't want to do what everybody else does. Because it only makes sense if you believe they're nice. And if you start seeing things a little straighter about what's going on, a lot of it won't make sense, and you'll want to do some things that are really frowned on here. Just remember, they are a tad dangerous. And every damn one of them seems to be a missionary. And missionaries get real ticked if you don't agree with them and have a tendency to murder you. See, we all make fun of the missionary and the cannibals pot, huh? But we forget it actually works the other way around too, don't it? I'm sure there's quite a number of cannibals that were put in missionary spots. They probably don't have those pictures too much today, do they? When I was a kid, that was a very common cartoon, was a picture of a missionary in a big cauldron with a bunch of cannibals, because they used to like to go and tell the cannibals, that they should like Christ instead of human flesh. That sort of ticked the cannibals off. And they told them, yes, certainly we really should. Why don't you sit in this big bowl? We're going to give you a bath. Let us heat the water a little bit for you. So if you do kind of make sense out of things here and decide you don't really want to do exactly what everybody else is doing, be a little quiet about it, okay? They really are kind of dangerous wild animals here. Don't rile them up too much. These days, human beings are sort of funny. And you can do just about anything as long as you don't say you're doing it. They don't seem to notice what you're actually doing most of the time. All they ever notice is what you talk about. So it's pretty easy most of the time if don't make a big deal out of it, okay? Just talk as if you're doing something normal, and then do whatever you damn well please. They'll never notice. They only believe words here. That's true. It is really true. Haven't you noticed that you can walk up and slap somebody up the side of the face as long as you don't say anything while you're doing it, and then if they get upset, you say, well, I didn't call you a name. I know you hit me on the head. Well, so, I didn't do it while calling you any names. I didn't say nothing bad. That's all that matters. It don't matter what I do. It just, I did it, and I did it without saying anything nasty to you. It's true. You can do anything you want as long as you say nice things while you're doing it, according to human beings. But God help you if you say a bad thing while you beat them up. That's really wrong. Okay, so that's one of the first ideas we want to maybe take a look at. Do I actually understand being a human being? Or am I just buying an interesting lie, hook, line, and sinker? And I'm a body with a bunch of thoughts and feelings and sensations and desires and so on and so forth, and that's it. Or is there also a spirit here that could experience all these things and be aware of them and live its own life, regardless of what the body and all the rest of the cuckoo bodies here want to do? Any questions or comments about that? Okay. I wish we could just leave it at that. But it don't quite work that way. I think I lost the audience for this one. Shall we take a break? Apparently it's needed. We'll come back in a few minutes. Any questions or comments? I know that was a little bit of a bombshell this morning. I know because I'm the one who dropped it. But it is about where I'm at these days. It appears to be that you're not going to get a real experience of the fact that you are not all that stuff that's going on in your head without considerable practice at disidentification. And perhaps if you actually do disidentification enough, as a practice, you see, because that's all it is. It's not the thing itself, it's a practice. Then you might actually have the experience itself of being that awareness. But I don't know how that's going to happen if there isn't even some effort being made, that practice, you see, to say, I'm not this stuff. Because it does appear that the identification is complete. So you do some of the things that we suggest as a practice. You know, that's kind of the word for it, okay? My favorite definition of practice is to act as if until it happens. So many years ago, I used to practice the piano. I acted as if I could play it. I couldn't, but I acted like I could, and I kept acting like I could, and I kept acting like I could, and then one day I discovered I actually could. And that's what practicing is, isn't it? So you act as if you're not all of that stuff, and then see if one day it ever actually happens, and you actually are in a different state, where you're aware of being a spirit that is not all those thoughts and feelings and opinions and crud that goes on, you see. It is very clear that right now that's, for most folks, just a theory, and they don't have any experience of it. I do find it interesting that they don't want to do the practice, however, and see if they can get that experience. So the next little part of this is to talk about the formation of the personality. Main thing that we are identified with and actually think is me. Excuse me. And that comes about by the process of birth. At birth, we all make a decision that we know what life is about. I think that's one of the funniest things I ever heard. I remember when I was in high school, I just thought it was the weirdest thing that what I was supposed to do was, before I had experienced life at all, because I did not personally consider living at home and going to school experiencing life. That was a very odd environment that I sort of hoped I would never be in again. At least not from the point of view I was in it then. It would have been maybe okay to be an adult in that game again, but it's a weird environment. What do you know about living when you're at home and going to school, is the way I felt about it. And yet I was supposed to look at all the possibilities, most of which I knew nothing about, and pick one that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I thought that was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. How could I possibly know what I wanted to do with the rest of the life when I'd never even had one yet, really? some folks around me didn't seem to have that problem. They knew what they wanted to do, but I wasn't one of them. I hadn't a clue. We did that once, I guess, so it makes sense to us to do it again. At the very moment of birth, we decide we know what life is about, even though we've never even experienced it yet. We've just begun to experience it, haven't we? We just arrived. Our entire experience so far of life on planet Earth is going from this lovely, warm, wonderful place where you don't breathe, you don't eat, you just float around in this lovely little sea, being fed and taken care of, and don't have to toil for a living, huh? Kind of sounds like paradise, doesn't it? Don't have to eat, you never get hungry. Don't have to work for nothing. Don't even know that there's something that you might have to work for, because there's nothing there but you and this little sea you float around in and a big booming sound. And then you go through this horrible little tunnel where you're just squeezed and pushed and prodded. Go through this terrible pain where you arrive here and suddenly you do have to breathe. And they have this weird idea here called stabbing you in the eyes every time you open them. I'll never forget that experience. Like, who made up this idea? Every time I move these little muscles up here, I get a stabbing pain in the front of my head. And so the eyes finally got a little used to having light on them, huh? And then some idiot came along and stuck liquid in them, which hurt like hell. They used silver nitrate in those days, you know, so you wouldn't get infections, I guess. Damn, that hurt. That is our entire experience of life so far. Going from this wonderful place where everything's beautiful through a horrible pain so that you can have more pains. And we know what life is about. That's the decision we make. I know what life is about. I know the purpose of living. The entire purpose of this show, I already know. And basically, it's to go back where I came from, because it really sucks here. It hurts here. We put words on that today, because it does change a little bit as time goes along. The essence of it does not change. But it has to change a little bit because of the how. There is no way I can crawl back into mommy's womb. It just isn't going to happen, even if she maybe wanted it to, is it? It was hard enough getting out of there. I can't get back in. And I don't think they can reconnect all the tubes again so that I can go back to that lovely place we all dream of, where I just float around and I don't have to do anything. I don't have to toil for a living. And I do meet a lot of folks as I wander through this world who actually still want that state, don't they? Gee, I wish I didn't have to work for a living. Not me. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure I would be bored to death in about well, maybe 36 hours. Since I've been working hard for quite a while, for the first 36 hours or so, I'd probably have a good time just sitting around doing absolutely nothing. Maybe as many as 72, I don't know. But I was telling Dave, he said he went on this cruise ship. And I said, that sounds lovely, but I have this sneaky suspicion that in a few days, I would be going out of my gourd, wanting to get off of that claustrophobic little thing and nowhere to go out in the middle of the ocean. I don't think I'm very likely to do that. And then he told me that most of the company that one has on those things are old crotchety folks, you know. Yeah, that don't sound like my idea of a holiday. It sounds like something that drives me crazy. Obviously, not everybody's like that, but I think that would be true for me. I don't ever want to retire. That sounds like a good way to die really fast, just to escape retirement. But I know a lot of people who have told me that that's what they wish, that they could just sit on their butt and somehow or another everything would be okay, and then they could just do the fun things in life, I guess. Basically what they're doing is pining for the womb, ain't they? Gee, I wish I could go back to just having a tube connected to me so that somebody else did all the work of digestion. And I had, you know, all the air come in here, so I didn't even have to breathe. It's just such a pain in the neck, breathing all day long. That is our big striving on planet Earth. Life is a struggle. And you know, it's interesting that nobody ever finishes that sentence, do they? Life is a struggle. Everybody's content to say that half sentence and leave it at that. We all know it's true, don't we? Except for, you know, a few people who are conditioned to argue the subject. No, it's not. Oh, I don't know. You seem to be toiling away just like everybody. No, I'm not. Life is a great joy. Yeah, I see. That's why you wear that frown so often, huh? There are a few people who are conditioned to argue that point, but most people just go along with it, don't they? They know damn well it's true. Life is a struggle. A struggle to what? See? The sentence has no subject. That is not a sentence. They taught me when I was in school that every sentence needed a noun and a verb and something about that verb, isn't that right? This only has, life is a struggle. A struggle to what? Doesn't say, does it? That is an incomplete sentence. I don't remember grammar well enough to know why it is, but I do remember they taught me some rules about how to make a sentence, and that one don't fit. Because it doesn't say what kind of struggle it is. Well, that's what it's a struggle. I want it to be non-disturbing here, and it isn't. And I spend every hour of every day trying to make planet Earth into a place that never bothers me. And it just ain't going to happen. So of course it's a struggle. Trying to do the bizarrest thing imaginable. Stop life from bugging you. Because you can't be free. You can't be free to live life the way it is. It always comes along and shoves something in your face that you're not free to experience. I'm not free to experience having somebody scream and yell at me. So now I gotta struggle away to make sure that nobody ever screams and yells at me again. No offense, but I really don't have to do that, you know? I am completely free to have you come up and just scream and yell at me and tell me what a jerk, fool, ridiculous buffoon I am. I don't have any problems with that. You can just do it for as long as you like. Because truth is, I don't care what you think. Not even particularly interested. You really want to volunteer it, that's fine with me, but I don't care. Just, there's no skin off my back. You can do it for as long as you like. I'll just sit there peacefully and smoke cigarettes while you have at it. I do not need to escape that experience. It is a tad unpleasant, not because of the words, but because of the emotions that are always broadcast along with them. I find dealing with that emotional, because that's energy, you know. The words don't have much impact on anything but the ears. They're just little sound waves. But the emotional part, that kind of comes in. I got to deal with that, don't I? So that part I find a little unpleasant. I got to transform all that yicky energy you're throwing at me into something I like better. So I won't just be smoking cigarettes. I got to do a little work. It's unpleasant, but it don't disturb me much. I'm free to do that. I worked very diligently for quite a bit of time to learn how to transform energy, folks. I'm really quite good at it. So all you're doing is just giving me an unpleasant chore. Not really disturbing me. Transforming energy is actually the simplest thing in the world. When somebody does come up, I know I'm digressing here a little bit, but I'm not sure most of you have ever really listened to this, and so you still got to fight when somebody throws all that crap at you, okay? Instead of just learning how to deal with it, respond to the situation, you see. It really isn't hard at all. All you got to do is throw a little agape its way, and it goes and turns into agape, because agape has that really weird quality. It turns everything into itself. It don't much tolerate anything that isn't it. And you throw a little love at it, and poof, it turns into love. It's the weirdest thing. All you got to do while somebody's sitting there screaming and yelling and telling you how horrible you are is look at them and say, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. As far as you're concerned, this is the right, proper, or justifiable thing to do, and it's okay with me, because that's what I do. I go around trying to do what's right or what's proper. You're no different than I am. This is just fine. And you just add that little bit of understanding to the energy, and it changes, and when it goes through your body, it's not that horrible, destructive anger anymore. And everything's hunky-dory. Just a little bit of work. That is the struggle that everybody talks about. Trying to keep unpleasant things from happening. You ain't going to be able to do it. I don't know how to stop all these idiotic people from putting car alarms in their cars, which don't seem to work too good to me. Now I understand they kind of have to do it, whether they like it or not, because if they don't, they can't get insurance on their car. And they gotta have insurance on their car, don't they? I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, thanks to the insurance companies. They don't work. I was on the phone with a client just Friday, and the car alarm went off. I could hear it over the phone. And of course, everybody talks about how disturbing it is. You see how bugged they are by the fact. And finally, the person I was on the phone with said, did anybody go out to check? Maybe she's in trouble. There was apparently no woman in the car while it's going off. He said, you might want to find out maybe she's doing that on purpose to get our attention. So clearly, if that alarm ever goes off, it's not going to stop nothing from happening because nobody goes to look anymore, do they? It just disturbs us all. And we sit around and complain about it. We don't even go to see if there's something going on. Now, how am I going to end that? And that's just one little thing out of life, isn't it? That's what I'm trying to do. Prevent the world from disturbing me, and I'm finding it a very difficult job. But as time goes along, I make up some ways to do it in this odd, strange environment I'm in called being a child in a family, which is going to last for a few years, and then I will never probably be in that environment for the rest of this life, will I? I hope. I hope I don't become a little kid that needs to be taken care of again. So I come up with some ways to deal with how disturbing it is, life is, that sort of work in that one weird and protected environment where people know I'm a little child that can't take care of itself, so they know they have to take care of me, and that ain't never going to happen in this life again. It only works there. But because it does work, we think it's the best thing since sliced bread. We do it repeatedly. It becomes what's now known as conditioning. You do something that works about 3 times in a row, and it becomes conditioning or a habit, and you do it for the rest of your life unconsciously without even realizing what you're doing, and certainly never checking to see if it's still working. I always got to watch folks while I'm training them as employees. Never let them get away with a mistake more than 2 times in a row, or you're stuck with it for as long as they work with you. You'll never be able to change it because they can't pay enough attention to even notice they're doing it.
That's what the guitar teacher told me.
Yeah. I learned that. That's where I learned that with the piano. Okay? You never play a passage wrong twice. If you play it wrong twice in a row, get up and walk away. But don't do it again or you're stuck with it. That's exactly where I learned it. That was so annoying while I was learning the piano. Couldn't do it, so I'd do it wrong 2 or 3 times, and now I couldn't change it without tremendous effort. And all of a sudden, to change it, if you're playing an instrument, you have to suddenly slow it way down so you can pay attention to every damn motion you make and do it that way about 5,000 times. And then you finally get it through your head. Okay, this is the way you do it, and not that stupid way you did it the first time. And that's the way it works. You do it 3 times in a row, and you are stuck with it for the rest of your life, unless you work really hard to deal with it. It's called conditioning. Now, the first thing that we do is we learn an interesting idea, which is that if I had my way, I would be non-disturbed. We make a decision. I want my way now. And the way to get it, the way to get my way, leaving out words, is to complain. Now, you see, as a child, that works. It's a built-in thing. Life kind of knows that most of us are pretty lazy. So it builds into human beings a couple things so that we would take care of our kids. One of them is this odd feeling that we all have, unless your body just really doesn't work. It's just built in, where you kind of look at a little helpless infant and you go, and you just want to go take care of it. You want that so much, like, oh, I want to take care of that little thing. And sometimes it breaks, and then we're horrified because this is called mother love, you see. And it's holy, and it's sacred. No, it's not. It's an automatic function of the body. And sometimes it don't work too good. And then we see what really happens if we don't have that automatic function. The little thing starts screaming and you strangle it to death, and then we're all horrified. How could anyone do that? Because that's the other thing that's given. Just in case that isn't quite enough, that little urge that you have to want to take care of the brat is given another ability, which is to make a sound that is like no other sound on the planet. And it is designed to be excruciatingly annoying to adult human beings, isn't it? An infant cry just sets our nerves on edge, and we have to go shut it up, don't we? So we go there to shut it up, and then that other thing kicks in and says, oh, I want to take care of it instead of killing it. All very well designed, isn't it? So your complaining works for a short period of time. You scream your bloody little head off, and some adult comes and figures out what's bugging you and takes care of it for you. You don't even have to know what's wrong. All you know is you have a sensation you don't like. You see? Perhaps it's hunger. Perhaps it's a little prick from where a pin went through you, because I grew up where we still use safety pins on diapers. I guess nowadays that just don't happen. You use Velcro. You never have to worry about the kid getting stuck by the pin, huh? Or some others, you're just having a sensation. You don't know what it is. You just know you don't like it. It's unpleasant. So you scream your head off, and somebody comes and just takes care of it. It's the most wonderful thing there is. And you sit there all pleased with this punch, and you say, look how powerful I am. Why, all I have to do is open my mouth and scream, and I get my way, and everything's lovely again. So you do that a few times, and now you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. And you spend the rest of your life complaining about everything in sight. Everything that bugs you, you just complain about it and complain about it in the many different ways that people have to complain so that it becomes a bludgeon that you use against those of us who are a little bit kind-hearted. He just beat at us until, out of our kind-heartedness, we will do like Mommy did and say, oh, I'll take care of it for you. Don't lift a finger. Why, don't get up from your chair. Just watch me do it for you. That's the theory, isn't it? It kind of stops working after a while, of course. And only rarely do I get my way from complaining. But now it has gone completely unconscious. I don't even know I'm doing it most of the time. If you think I'm wrong, sometime when somebody's complaining up a storm, when they're done, say, do you think your complaining is going to do anything? And listen to them tell you, I wasn't complaining. Because that is almost always what will happen. I wasn't complaining. I don't even know they're doing it. It's completely unconscious. That's the way it works. You do a thing several times, and it works. It becomes conditioning. It becomes a habit. And you do it from that point on, unconsciously, without even realizing it's going on. And you certainly never check to say, does it still work? Do I get my way when I complain now? How often do I get my way when I complain? And that's a little thing that all of us needs to do in this one point of view. Check this out and see if you can see the illusion in this. Then we make another remarkable decision. I have a right to get my way when I complain. That's actually how it begins. I just love this power that I have so much that I come to another conclusion. Since it almost always works when I'm an infant, I come to the conclusion that I have a right to this. I have a right to be taken care of. And we start one of the most unpleasant trips that human beings do. Having rights and sticking up for them. And most of the time these days, we only see it in a sociological sense, since we have all gone absolutely insane. And all we seem to be able to talk about anymore is who has rights. And rights apparently are given to you by law. How you like them apples? The folks who originally kind of set this country up, that's not what they said, you know. They said man has certain inalienable rights. They didn't say we give them to him. They say they're there and you can't take them away. And then they said, and what we're going to do with law is protect them, which don't make a hell of a lot of sense, does it? If you can't take it away, I don't see why you got to protect them by law. Well, now we've changed our minds and decided that they're actually given by law. They're no longer inalienable God-given rights, because God, I guess, in the meantime, has left the scene. He was around 300 years ago, I guess, because I talked about him a lot, but today he's vanished. He got bored with us, I guess. So he stopped giving us our rights, and now politicians have to give them to us. No offense, but I'd rather be dependent on God than a goddamn politician, personally. I don't want to play this game. But that's what we think the game is about now. We hear the word rights, and because it's become a sociological thing, you see, a political thing, we think that's all there is to it. Boy, are you not looking. You're not paying any attention. When you get in a line, you have a right to my place in the line, don't you? If I'm there before you. It's true. And you will happily inform me of that fact, won't you? God help me if I don't move fast enough to suit you in that line. When you're driving down the freeway, wherever I am, somebody else has a right to it. And they get really ticked at me because I'm in their place and can't wait to just swerve around me and pull right in front of me, and half the time drive slower than I was anyway. They didn't want to go fast, they just wanted to be where I was. That was their place. They had a right to it. In relationships, you have a right to dictate my every move if I'm in a relationship to you, don't you? You have a right to tell me what to say, when to say it, how to say it, in what tone of voice, what emotion to have when I say it. You have so many rights, it is just unbelievable, don't you? Now, this is not a political thing only. It's just that politics is based on these same stupid infantile decisions as everything else. So we have decided to take an infant's decision and turn it into a political system.